You pray with me. Holy God, midwife of all beginnings and of all endings that are also beginnings, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. What if everything, every small action we take matters? What if it has the power to change a life? What if we have in our own hands the power to make all the difference in the world? Perhaps you don't know the names of Shiphrah or Puah. I hope that after today, these two midwives stand among your biblical heroes. They're certainly among mine. I imagine one of them older, perhaps Shiphrah, the one named first, an experienced midwife who has been serving her Hebrew community for decades. She's well-known, trusted, and beloved. And Puah is younger, having started out as Shiphrah's apprentice, but certainly her equal by now. The two love the work that they do. The messy, mundane, miraculous work of delivering babies. That is, until they're called before the Egyptian king, the Pharaoh. I can't help but imagine them shaking as they stand before the ruler of all of Egypt. And then they're told, ordered to do the unthinkable, to kill all of the baby boys that they deliver. Are they simply supposed to pretend that the child died during birth, to hand over a limp and lifeless body to a new mother, offering the comfort of platitudes and apologies? It won't be long before their community notices a pattern. Why is it that only the girls survive Shiphrah and Puah's ministrations? There will be no way to keep this evil a secret. So to Pharaoh's face, the two women agree. Yes, Pharaoh, yes, King, I imagine them saying as they bow low, it will be as you command. But of course it isn't. These women are called to the work of birthing, the work of life, the work of bringing babies safely from womb into world. And so they disobey the king's orders. They disobey the Pharaoh's command because they love and respect God, because their compassion is stronger than their fear. Did you know that the Hebrew word for compassion is taken from the root word rechem, which means of all things womb? Compassion and womb. I can't help but marvel at these two midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, who are womb workers in a now double sense of the word. Midwives pulling babies out of the womb, but also workers of compassion and love. And in this story, and let's call it what it is, their civil disobedience, their breaking of a command, an order, a rule, their courage puts a protective womb, a net of compassion around the Hebrew mothers and their newborn sons. Of course, it doesn't take the Pharaoh long to notice that the Hebrew boys just keep on getting born, and they're alive. So he calls the midwives back. And what do? Another bold act of civil disobedience. They lie in the Pharaoh's court. They play into the Pharaoh's fear of the Israelites' strength and resilience. These Hebrew women are not like the Egyptians. They're vigorous and strong. There's nothing we can do about the baby boys. They're nursing at their mother's breasts by the time we arrive. So Pharaoh has to hatch another plan. His people, the Egyptians, will have to do his dirty work. They will kill the Israelite sons. They will cast the babies into the Nile to drown, I assume. or to be eaten by crocodiles and other lurking predators. And so we come to our next set of female resistors, our next tale of civil disobedience, of compassion, a Hebrew woman who hides her baby boy as long as she can, and then who follows the word of the law, but not its intention. She does, after all, cast her child into the Nile, but not without wrapping him up and placing him in a waterproof basket, not without the watchful eyes of his big sister, waiting to see what will happen. Does the mother know where the Egyptian princess comes to bathe? Is this part of her plan? Is she gambling on the compassion of another woman, of the Pharaoh's daughter? The story only tells us that the princess comes and sees the basket among the reeds. She hears the baby crying and she feels sorry for him. She knows exactly who this baby is. Let's not fool ourselves. She knows exactly whose this baby is, and she knows the rules in relationship to Hebrew boys. And yet compassion moves her. Perhaps the irony is not lost on you that this child, this baby, ends up back with its own biological mother, now under the physical and financial protection of the Pharaoh's daughter. That's irony for you, if ever there was some irony. When the baby has finally been weaned, his mother brings him back to the princess. She adopts him as her own son, and she names him Moses, for she drew him out of the water. Simple acts of courage and compassion, sometimes even of civil disobedience, refusing to follow an order or law or custom that is wrong, that is hurtful. Simple acts of courage and compassion have the power to change the future, not just of one child, but of a nation. In this story, of two nations, of Israel and Egypt. For under this child's leadership, for under Moses' leadership, the Israelites will escape slavery. They will be liberated from Egyptian oppression. What if everything we do, every courageous, compassionate action we take, no matter how small, matters? What if it has the power to change a life, a nation, our world? Right now, and I don't need to tell you, our world is filled with uncertainty. Bitterness, fear, hatred, and violence march across our newspapers and news feeds. In this last week, our nation has seen its share of terrible violence. Police shootings, protest shootings, fires, storms, jobs once furloughed, soon to be lost permanently. Families, teachers, educators, and school staff navigating back to school with challenges and concerns they did not imagine having to face a year ago. And I usually try to keep explicit partisan politics out, but let's just name both sides. The Republican and Democratic national conventions have fed us fear. More reasons for division and distrust, less reason for collaboration, compromise, or compassion. I don't know about you, but sometimes the problems seem pretty overwhelming to me, impossible even. We feel powerless. In such a time, our actions can feel pointless, even futile. So why not just act out of fear if it doesn't matter anyway? Why not simply distract ourselves and aim for immediate gratification, whatever that looks like right now? Why not simply look out for us and ours? And why not? Well, because the truth has always been that our actions do matter. Just as Shiphrah and Puah's courage to disobey Pharaoh's order mattered, just as a young mother's choice to hide her baby mattered, just as a princess's compassion to adopt a condemned Hebrew infant mattered. They didn't know they were changing history. That wasn't the plan. They were just taking a simple action of compassion and courage. They didn't know who this infant would become. God's servant Moses, the one who would liberate all of Israel. Maybe you've heard of the butterfly effect. This idea that a single, simple action has the power to change the world. An act of compassion and courage in the face of injustice. An act of compassion and generosity in the face of need. An act of compassion and faith in the face of fear. An act of compassion and presence, dignity and respect in the face of division and isolation. Isn't this, after all, what it means to be resilient? Not simply to overcome challenges, but to live and act with courage and compassion, especially when the going gets tough. I think of all the names that we called out. And we called those out not just because those people survived, but because they live with courage and compassion. Especially when it seems like their actions don't matter. Beloved of God, our actions do matter. This is the message of our strange story of meddling midwives, of a persistent parent and a peace-loving princess. This is the message of the Gospels over and over and over again. Feed the poor, house the homeless, visit the prisoner, love the stranger and the enemy, and your neighbor as yourself. Practice generosity. Have faith, hope, rejoice, and whatever else you do, do it in love and compassion, because it matters. Because difficult though it may be, this is the road to resurrection. Not just for you or for me, not just for our children and grandchildren, but for all of us, for all humanity. So this week, practice resilience. Act with courage and compassion. Because, beloved of God, you never know how God might be transforming a life, a relationship, a community, even the world, through you. May it be so. Amen.